I had been standing at the taxi stand for a long time, and slowly it was getting late. My house was quite far from here, and I was hoping to find a ride that would take me in the direction of my home, which would make things easier for me. A couple of people came to talk to me, but I refused because their destinations were different from mine, and at that moment, all I cared about was getting home. After a while, I checked my watch and saw it was 12 a.m. I thought I would wait for another half hour, and if no ride showed up, I would just head home. But fortunately, 15 minutes later, a beautiful woman approached my taxi and said she needed a ride. I immediately smiled and looked at her from head to toe. She appeared to be around 35, 40 years old, but was incredibly beautiful and graceful. Her presence was delicate and soft. After seeing her, I felt a sense of unease creeping in. I asked her where she needed to go, and the place she mentioned was definitely not on my way home. But for some reason, looking at this woman made me go crazy. So I immediately agreed and told her the fare would be double. She readily agreed, probably because she was in a hurry to get home at that hour. I helped her into my taxi and started driving. Every now and then, I looked in the rearview mirror and I could clearly see her, absorbed in her mobile phone. I casually started a conversation and asked, "Madam, why are you heading to such a desolate area at this hour? There's hardly any population there." The place she mentioned was not fully developed, so only a few houses were built there. She smiled and replied, "My house is there. I just came to my sister's house." After that, I didn't say anything but slowed down the car. She didn't comment on the speed either and remained busy with her phone. My eyes kept admiring her beauty through the mirror and my emotions kept changing. My wife had been at her parents' house for several days and I was alone. This loneliness was growing inside me like a fire. The devil was taking over me, and my gaze started to wander. I softly asked her, "Madam, don't you get scared traveling alone at night?" She smiled and said, "No, I'm not scared at all. I'm used to traveling alone. My home is in such a remote area, so I have to go." I nodded in agreement and intentionally turned off the car's air conditioning. Within moments, the car became very hot and I started sweating. She immediately said, "Why isn't the AC working?" I expressed concern and said, "I'm not sure, it might be broken. It's been causing problems lately." She suggested, "Should I roll down the windows?" I refused, saying, "No, the situation isn't safe, and this is a desolate road, so it's better not to roll down the windows. But if you like, you can remove your shawl to feel less warm." At my suggestion, she took off her shawl and tossed it aside, wrapping her hair up and taking deep breaths. It was the hot season, and with the AC off, the car had become sweltering. The moment she took off her shawl, my gaze immediately began to quench its thirst, for she was the epitome of stunning feminine beauty, and I couldn't help but keep staring at her. As time passed, her entire outfit became drenched in sweat, her body glistening from the perspiration. I too was in a similar condition, but the heat inside me felt far stronger than the external heat. I looked at her and, picking up a water bottle, I extended it toward her, saying, "Madam, have some water. It's just a little while more, then we'll be there." She took the water bottle from my hand, and I deliberately brushed my fingers against hers. Her hands were so soft, smooth, and delicate. Without saying anything, she held the bottle, taking sip after sip of water, then poured a little onto her head. This made her outfit cling even more to her body, revealing her beauty even further. My mind immediately went to my wife, who was neither as beautiful nor as feminine as this woman. She had a plain body, one I didn't find attractive at all. My mother had forced me to marry Noreen, as she was my aunt's daughter, and to me, she had always been nothing more than a forced wife. Noreen didn't know how to make me happy. Every time I tried to be close to her, she would get anxious, nervous, step back, and sometimes even refuse to fulfill my desires. That was why my heart had turned cold toward her. I wanted a wife who would completely satisfy me. Since my marriage to Noreen, I had become obsessed with beautiful women. Whenever I saw one, my gaze would automatically fixate on her, as if the beauty I was missing in my own home was found elsewhere. And now this woman's youth had completely consumed my mind. I wanted to quench my thirst tonight. After all, it had been almost a week since Noreen went back to her parents' house, and she had no intention of returning anytime soon. She preferred her mother's home over mine. For the past 2 days, I had been asking her to come back, but her response was always the same. She wanted to stay with her parents. I didn't push her further, as I knew that even if she came back, it wouldn't bring me happiness. She loved her family more than she loved me. While driving, I looked at the woman again. She was now sitting in the back seat, leaning against the seat with her eyes closed, completely at ease, and her beautiful form was right in front of me. She was probably lightly asleep. That's why I seized the opportunity and, before reaching the area, stopped at a deserted taxi stand to park my car there, just so no one would suspect anything. After stopping the car, I turned off the AC and quietly moved to the back seats. My movement startled the woman awake, and she looked at me with shock and distress. I quickly placed a finger on her lips, leaned closer, and whispered, "No need to panic. You are feeling hot, right? That's why I turned the AC back on." She stared at me in confusion and asked, "Why aren't you driving? My house is still far away." Smiling, I traced my finger over her soft lips and said, "I just want to spend some time with you. You're so beautiful, and I want tonight to be memorable for both of us." Slowly, I began teasing her through her damp clothes. I wasn't afraid of her screaming. There was no one around for miles, and the car windows were shut tight. As I toyed with the zipper of her shirt, my eyes locked onto hers. She didn't scream or resist, just stared back. Gently, I slid her sleeve down and pressed my lips against her fair shoulder. To my surprise, despite everything, she didn't hesitate or protest. Instead, as I moved closer, she suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace, responding as if she'd been waiting for this moment. She seemed even more desperate than I was. So much so that before I could undress her, she had already undressed me. Her eagerness thrilled me, and I thought, tonight is going to be even more unforgettable than I imagined. Slowly, she ran her hands over my body, pulling me closer. The backseat lights dimmed, and then, as she leaned in, she quietly opened her purse. I didn't understand what she was doing until the next second when the ground seemed to vanish beneath my feet. In her hand was a large dagger, which she plunged into the lower part of my stomach. A sudden crimson fury flashed in her eyes, and even in the darkness, I could see the hatred burning in them. Panicking, I tried to pull away, but she gripped my neck tightly. "Where do you think you're going?" she hissed. "Finish what you started, properly. You're burning with desire, aren't you? Well, I want you to quench that fire for both of us." She increased the pressure of the blade, and I gasped in pain. What are you doing?" I snarled. "Pull that knife away." She laughed coldly. "Oh, come closer. You wanted to play with young women so badly, didn't you? Thought you'd take advantage of my loneliness? Then why back away now? Come here." The dagger pressed deeper, and I knew, any second that sharp blade would pierce right through me. I scrambled backward, barely managing to fling the car door open before collapsing onto the ground. She stepped out after me, her face twisted into a sinister grin. "What's wrong?" she taunted, advancing. "Why run now? This is just the beginning. I know men like you, preying on lonely women." Before I could react, she lunged, slashing the dagger across my lower stomach. A scream tore from my throat, echoing in the desolate night as I stumbled onto the road, blood gushing from the wound. I clutched my stomach, desperate to stem the flow, but she chased me like a woman possessed, utterly fearless, her eyes wild with frenzy. Noreen's face flashed before my eyes. I'd never seen her raise her voice, let alone show anger. She'd always been quiet, head bowed, retreating to her parents' home more often lately, perhaps because of me. But this woman, this was a side of her I'd never imagined. Gasping, I staggered toward a crowded area, but darkness swallowed my vision. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, stitches lining my abdomen. My wife and mother stood over me, their faces etched with worry. I thrashed, screaming, until Mother pulled me into her arms. Noreen gripped my hand, both murmuring reassurances. When the panic subsided, I croaked, "Who brought me here? How did you find me?" "A stranger called," Mother said. "Told us you'd been attacked and were being taken to the hospital. The police found your car and some clues about that woman." Her voice trembled. "Beta, who was she? Why would she—" Noreen's eyes, though silent, burned with questions of her own. I scrambled backward desperately, somehow managing to open the car door before tumbling out onto the ground. She stepped out after me, her face twisted in a devilish grin. "What's wrong?" she sneered. "Why are you running away now? This is just the beginning." She moved closer, her voice dripping with venom. "I know men like you, the kind who take advantage of a young woman's loneliness." Before I could react, she lunged forward, slashing the dagger across my lower abdomen. My screams pierced the empty night air as I stumbled onto the road, running like a madman with her chasing close behind. I had never seen a woman so fearless, so utterly deranged in her pursuit. Blood gushed from my wound as I tried desperately to stem the flow with my hands while simultaneously trying to escape. Noreen's face flashed before my eyes. I had never seen her raise her voice, never witnessed her angry. She always kept her head bowed, never answering back. Lately, she'd been spending more time at her parents' house, probably because of my behavior. But this woman, this was a side of her I never knew existed. As I ran, I somehow reached a more populated area, but then everything went black as I collapsed unconscious. When I came to, I found myself in a hospital bed with stitches covering the wound on my abdomen. My wife and mother stood by my bedside, their faces filled with concern. The moment I opened my eyes, I began screaming hysterically until my mother hugged me tightly and Noreen grasped my hand, both trying to calm me down. When I finally composed myself, I asked anxiously, "Who brought me here? How did you get here?" My mother explained, "Some kind soul called us saying you'd been injured and were being taken to the hospital. The police have found your car, Sasai, and some leads about that woman." She looked at me with worried eyes. "Son, who was that woman? Why would she attack you in the middle of the night?" While my mother spoke, I noticed Noreen's eyes burning with unspoken questions and suspicion. Perhaps this was why she had started spending more days at her parents' house. Whenever she was with me, even in moments of intimacy, I would target her body with criticism, never ceasing my body shaming. To the point where she began to dread my presence. She would flee whenever I approached, seeking escape. Now she spent most of her time at her parents' home. My interest had shifted completely to other beautiful women. I had grown tired of my own wife. And now, because of this, I found myself in this terrible predicament. The case was going to court, and I had no idea what would happen next. So, before it was too late, I folded my hands before Noreen and begged, "Forgive me. I've always treated you poorly, humiliated you. Perhaps this is why all this is happening to me." Noreen immediately grasped my folded hands and said, "I know you've been wronged. You wanted a beautiful woman full of youth, but got a wife like me. But that's not my fault. My body is naturally made this way. Even if I wanted to, I can't change my body. I've told Amma many times that I want to see a doctor for treatment," she continued, tears welling in her eyes. "But Amma says my body will balance itself after having a child, that a woman's body changes completely after childbirth. So I've been waiting for that day when I get pregnant and become worthy of you after delivering our baby." As she broke down crying, I realized how much pain I had caused her. How difficult it must be for a woman to hear that she's not complete as a woman, when it wasn't even her fault. I pulled her close and said, "I've realized my mistake now. I understand it was all a flaw in my thinking. A woman's heart matters far more than her body. You've always cared for my mother, remained loyal to me, looked after our home and my needs. That is your true beauty." Hearing this, a smile finally appeared on her face. She hugged me tightly and said, "Don't worry. Everything will be all right." But how could I tell her my real fear? That I was terrified of what that woman might say in court. When the court date arrived a week later, I didn't want to take Noreen or Amma with me. I strictly forbade them, saying they had no business being in court, and went alone with my lawyer. Soon after, the woman was brought into the dock. What she said next brought tears to my eyes. Sobbing, she explained, "My husband passed away. I was living alone in great difficulty. When I was forced to take a job, the wolves of this society made my life hell. They lurked in every corner, hidden behind facades of decency, yet their true nature came out in the most terrifying ways. Wherever I went, men tried to take advantage of my vulnerability. The workplace was no refuge, as it became another battleground where I had to fight just to maintain my dignity. Men would glance at me with eyes full of greed, lust, and desire, their gazes following me like shadows that refused to leave. Some tried to make small talk, while others attempted to touch me inappropriately, believing that my silence meant consent. In all these moments, I felt like I was being suffocated, trapped by the weight of society's judgment and men's crude desires. I had no choice but to start carrying a dagger. It wasn't just a tool, it became my shield, my protector, in a world that was constantly trying to strip me of my agency. Whenever a man looked at me with lust or tried to exploit my youth, I would strike him. I knew where to strike, where it would hurt the most, where it would end his manhood. It wasn't about killing him, it was about stopping him, making sure he would never look at another woman the same way again, and it was always self-defense. People often ask me why do you live alone? Why travel alone? That's why these things happen to you. Why don't you get married? Why don't you settle down like the others? They didn't understand. They didn't understand the force of my independence, the strength it took for me to stand alone, to carve a path for myself in a world that constantly tried to pull me back. But more than that, they didn't understand the vulnerability of being a woman alone in a society filled with predators. So I want to ask you, Your Honor, is a woman's solitude a crime? Is it a crime for a woman to choose to live alone, to seek independence and autonomy? My husband is gone. My parents are dead. My siblings are all married, each of them busy with their own families, their own lives. I have no one else, no one to depend on but myself. I live alone out of necessity. I work out of necessity. I travel alone because it's the only way I know how to survive. And yet, despite this, I am made to feel like I am the one in the wrong. Does this mean that the wolves of society have a license to prey on my existence? That because I choose to walk alone, I am open for the taking? It is a cruel, twisted notion, but it is one that is ingrained in the very fabric of our society. Men like the taxi driver, like the one who tried to exploit me, are not held accountable. Instead, women like me are blamed for daring to live independently, for daring to survive in a world that is stacked against us. That taxi driver, for example, was lucky to escape me. Otherwise, I might have wounded him in a way that would have cost him his manhood forever. I didn't want to hurt him, but I had to defend myself, had to protect myself from his advances. He made the first move, he attacked me, and I responded as I had been taught by life, by experience. Everything I did was in self-defense, but even that self-defense, even that simple act of survival is twisted and questioned by society. If this court punishes me, then it must punish every man in our society who leers at women like me. Every man who uses his power to exploit the vulnerability of women. Every man who believes that a woman's body, a woman's space, is his to take whenever he desires. If I am to be punished for defending myself, then it is only fair that the wolves who stalk the streets, who stalk the very lives of women, are punished as well. This is not about one isolated incident. This is about a pattern, a systemic issue that affects us all. With these words, I fell silent. I could no longer hold back the tears. They streamed down my face one after another as if they were the release of years of bottled-up pain and frustration. The moment I had been waiting for, standing before the judge and making my case, was over. But as I looked around, I saw the faces of the people in the room, and I realized that my fight was not just my own. It was a fight that every woman who had ever been taken advantage of, who had ever been made to feel small and powerless, had fought. It was a fight we all shared. Over the past few days, I had come to realize my mistakes. I had acted out of fear, out of the deep-seated belief that I had to protect myself at all costs. But now, as I stood before the court, I understood something more important. I understood how close I had come to becoming just like the very predators I had feared. I had been ready to exploit someone, to take advantage of a woman who, like me, had suffered. I had been on the verge of becoming one of them, the very kind of man who had made my life hell. Before the judge, I confessed my guilt. I didn't want to be absolved for what I had done. No, I wanted to make it right. I confessed because I wanted the woman who had suffered at my hands to know that I was truly sorry. And I confessed because I wanted to make sure that men like me, those who commit such wrongs, who use their power and privilege to prey on vulnerable women, would be held accountable. My confession shocked not only the court, but also the woman herself. She sat there looking at me in silence. I could see the tears in her eyes, but I could also see something else, something that left me speechless. It was forgiveness. To my surprise, she forgave me. In this society, she said, it's not one or two, but 90% of men who seek to take advantage of lonely women. If you truly wish to reform, I am ready to forgive you. Her words hit me like a wave, crashing over everything I had known, everything I had believed. The court dismissed the case and I returned home, immediately embracing Noreen. She was my life now. I had been wrong, and I knew it. I had been blinded by the physical beauty of women, by the surface-level judgments we men make, failing to see the depth, the soul, the heart of the woman standing before me. Noreen may not have been conventionally beautiful, but the way she cared for my home, my family, and my mother, her tenderness and understanding, made her truly radiant. And that woman I had intended to victimize, she had already suffered unbearable pain in her life. Why did I want to bury her further under my lust? Was my desire worth the cost of her suffering? Was I willing to destroy another person just to satisfy my own cravings? These questions haunted me, but in the end, they led me to an important realization. Is every woman forced to live alone, to survive alone, to travel alone, unsafe in our society? Do we as men believe that we have the right to take advantage of a woman's solitude, to see her as prey simply because she is alone? Do you, Your Honor, also believe that today's women should not live independently, that they should be chained by the same old traditions and expectations that have kept them silent for centuries? As a woman, have you ever faced body shaming, harassment, or the cruel gaze of men who think they can take from you whatever they please? This is not just about me. This is about all women, about the countless voices that have been silenced for too long, about the struggles they face every day just to survive in a world that is too often hostile to their existence. I will never forget the lessons I learned in that courtroom. The woman who forgave me taught me more than I could ever have imagined. And now I am determined to live my life in a way that honors her forgiveness, by treating every woman with the respect, dignity, and love they deserve. As a woman, have you ever faced body shaming or harassment?